Can fasting lead to muscle loss? And can you incorporate fasting into your routine if your goal is to build muscle? The answer is yes and yes. And I want to break it down for you and give you some of the nuance of this discussion. Because I imagine that you do want to build some muscle and improve your fitness, but you also know that there's a lot of health benefits of fasting. And there is a way to incorporate this all together. I'm going to explain to you some of the science, the physiology, and the practical tips. Let's break this down. So first I want to define fasting because it can mean a whole bunch of different things. There is the intermittent fasting on a daily basis, the 16-8 style fasting where you might have that first meal around 10 and have dinner at 6. That is a much different experience than on the extreme doing a 72-hour fast, which is great for stem cell production, deep autophagy, but is a different experience metabolically for the body. So we're going to start here by understanding the progression of a fast through that phase, and then we're going to reintegrate it into the practicalities that'll serve you in your routine. Now, over the first 24 hours of a fast, your body is really burning a lot of the stored carbohydrates, the glycogen that's in your muscles and the liver. And when those glycogen stores are all burned through, your body then turns to fat, to beta oxidation, releasing those fatty acids, burning those, converting ketones and fueling the body. That happens from around 24 hours to 36 hours plus. And if you go into an extended fast, you're burning a lot of fat. It seems though, around the 48-hour to 72-hour mark is where you really run the risk of getting catabolic from a muscle tissue perspective. As the body is trying to regulate some amount of blood glucose, it can break down muscle tissue and use a process called gluconeogenesis to convert those amino acids to glucose to stabilize the body. So, prolonged fasting is catabolic. Hard stop. You will lose muscle on longer, deeper fasts. Now, there's a lot of research studying this topic because most people are not just ripping a 72-hour fast every week. I still think there's a lot of benefits from a health perspective of doing deeper fasting occasionally, even though it can lead to some muscle loss, because as I've shared in other videos, the 72-hour and deeper fasts activate stem cell production, is deep autophagy, very healing for the body. But on the muscle mass perspective, the science is super clear. There is a meta-analysis that shows that all these different studies that have looked at this exact topic, that as long as you are getting one, adequate protein intake, which is around 0.8 grams per pound of body weight is a rough target, and two, you're doing resistance training, then daily intermittent fasting does not lead to muscle loss. In fact, there's some studies that even show that daily intermittent fasting with protein and strength training can actually lead to muscle mass increases. So it's totally fine. And there's a lot of people who love to do the 16-8 fasting where they skip breakfast or shift that first meal back, often train in the morning fasted, have that first meal around 9-10 a.m., and then have an eating window until 5 or 6 p.m. at night. That totally works. It is very great. Now, for the purpose of muscle building on that type of plan, it is important that you're getting obviously enough protein, but also enough calories. I think a lot of people who do this 16-8 style daily fasting are really good at like maintaining their weight, reducing fat, but oftentimes feel like they're not making a lot of gains necessarily. To make the gains, you want to make sure that you're eating enough and being in that calorie surplus. So that can be a little challenging in a compressed eating window, so something to consider. Which kind of leads me to my next point. If your goal is pure muscle building, you want to get as jacked as possible, then I would say compressing your time eating window every single day is probably not your best option. Sure, it's good for convenience, but most of the bodybuilders, the biggest people in the world, people on Mr. Olympia stages, are not doing daily 16-8 intermittent fasting. They're having many meals spread throughout the day because they're trying to hit the 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 calories they need to support that amount of muscle mass and tissue. So something to consider, the calorie aspect of it is important. Now, one thing that is good though, and I think a way to weave in the health benefits of fasting with the goal of muscle building is actually to do 24-hour to 36-hour fasts once per week. I feel like this is kind of like the best of all worlds. You could have just your daily routine in whatever setup that is, resistance training, good protein, adequate calories, and then once in a while, you can get into a deep fasted state for the insulin sensitivity benefits, for the autophagy. And this might mean that you do a 24-hour dinner to dinner fast, or maybe you extend it to 36 hours. I think it's a really good kind of marriage of the two. So you're on this kind of muscle building bulking plan, but once per week you do a deeper fast. Now, a caveat here is you don't want to be doing this deeper fasting the day after you lifted. Because after you've lifting inherently is a catabolic process, right? You're going in, you're lifting heavy stuff, you're breaking muscle tissue down, you're in a catabolic state and your body wants to rebuild. It wants to increase these signals, mTOR, cellular signal for muscle protein synthesis, it's building and increasing. So during that time in the 24 hours post-training, you want to be feeding your body with protein. So it would be harmful, or at least not effective, to go do a 24-hour fast after you did a giant leg day, because your body's saying, bro, give me the amino acids, give me the proteins, help me fuel and recharge. So I think that's an important concept, is not to do a prolonged fast a day after training. But let's say that you had your training day, you ate and you had a rest day, and then you have a second rest day. That second rest day could be a fine day to go ahead and do a 24-hour fast. And maybe over the course of the year, the net benefit of that would be you get more insulin sensitivity that happens. Because a lot of people find, if they're on these big high-calorie bulking style plans, is over time, as the muscle building phase goes longer, the bulk goes longer, you end up getting fatter and getting less muscle mass because your body becomes less sensitive to insulin. You're just like feeding more calories, and it's just not a good scenario. So I think the marriage here is that a 24-hour to 36-hour fast on a muscle building plan is great. If you do 16/8 daily fasting, as long as you're getting enough protein, enough calories and resistance training, you're not gonna lose muscle mass, and you can certainly gain some muscle mass. And then a key point I want to bring home that kind of marries the whole muscle mass with longevity perspective is that we have counter metabolic machinery. Muscle building uses mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin, which basically is what stimulates protein synthesis. Insulin stimulates mTOR. So this whole idea of strength training increases mTOR, creatine helps with this process, amino acids like leucine increase this process. That's the building up machinery. Fasting is when mTOR is low and AMP kinase, this other signal, is high. This is the catabolic machinery. This is really important for longevity. And so you want to have both signals working in your life. And this is why we see a lot of bodybuilders who take anabolic steroids, eat very high calorie diets, never basically try to stimulate AMP kinase in any meaningful way, and oftentimes take drugs like straight up insulin that, keeps this anabolic state happening all the time. They don't live a very long time. A lot of them die in their 60s. It's very, very common experience from the drugs and this constant anabolic state. The anabolic state also drives up IGF-1, which is a kind of derivative hormone of insulin related to growth hormone. It can cause cancers to grow. So it's like anabolism unchecked with catabolism is not the recipe for a long life. There's a way to kind of get these things all working in your life. If you like daily intermittent fasting, let me know in the comments below. If you haven't tried a 24-hour to 36-hour fast once a week, it can be a really good, helpful tool. And I like this kind of balanced approach of having both muscle building and health in my routine. And then sometimes there's a period where I want to get really focused on building muscle and I fast less. And there's a period where I'm a little more focused on being sharp at work, being more cognitive stuff, then I'm just fasting more. So these are just levers and switches to pull into your life. I hope you found this very valuable. Get enough protein, strength train, incorporate some fasting, and this will help you serve a long, healthy life with great performance. And I hope you found this very valuable. If you did, drop a comment below, give me a like and a thumbs up. Of course, if you want help with an actual program that incorporates ideas like fasting, strength training, nutrition, supplementation, and accountability, check out our Fit Father and Fit Mother Foundations programs, 6-week programs. We launch a new group every single month. There's going to be links in the description. We'd love to have you in the programs with us. Thank you, my friend. Dr. Anthony Balduzzi signing off. I'll talk to you very soon.